Welcome to the Seattle Overload podcast, and it's that time of the week again where Ty Gonzalez and Ty Dane Gonzalez and
Hey, you
me,
better get it
Matty.
right.
Yeah, I will get it right. And Matty F Brown,
Matty Brown, Matthew Brown.
Matthew Football Brown,
Matthew.
recap the Seahawks news from the week so far. We have had Pete Carroll's press conference with two of them, in fact, and a radio appearance on Pete, getting busy in the media. And we've also had Clint Hurt. We don't have yet Shane Waldron stuff, so apologies that we won't be covering that. But we've got a lot to dive into. Particularly, Pete Carroll sounds like he's a bit of a let Gino cook fan.
So am I. Yeah, so we've had some comments from Pete that make it sound like some people have taken it as, he wants to pass the ball more. They want to be a pass first team. That's what I'm hearing. To me, though, Matty, I think it's more about the way in which they approach the pass game with Gino and taking more shots, taking more explosives. Because, I mean, he explicitly said that. I forget if it was in his radio hit or in one of the pressers, but explicitly said, we want to use, or we want to get into more explosives. We want to get into our game because we can do that. We just want to do it more. We want to take more shots. Basically, that's what I took from what Pete said this week about Gino and the whole let Gino cook thing. Because also from a volume standpoint, Gino threw 30 times on Sunday. How many times did he throw on against the Broncos? Wasn't it somewhere in
they only ran the ball
20s?
11 times, so
yeah,
they definitely they threw a lot. And that's a great point. Like, and that's what I was thinking too. Like, they're already pass heavy. Like,
yeah.
now some of that's been circumstance, but also like the Broncos game was fairly close throughout. There wasn't there wasn't a blowout nature like we got in San Francisco, and yet they were still passing the ball at a high rate. And it's, we'll get into it on the tape section with Griffin. Obviously, he's a big Gino advocate, but to me, this kind of reflects how, Geno Smith is as a passer, and Griffin spoke about, how expanding the drop back game with him is, beneficial because that's what Geno's good at, right? Like accuracy, picking apart teams from the pocket. And to me, the Carroll thing was, it's more about opening up the passing game that they're doing already. He praised Gino for being poised and having command. He said about how lacking explosives, and actually Carroll's comments like repeatedly are really high on Gino. It's like the most praise I've heard him have for a quarterback. And what was really telling was he said he didn't want to wait 3 to 4 more weeks to figure out what Gino's looking like. He thinks Gino's the real deal right now. Let's go. Let's open up the passing game. And my biggest feeling from all of this is relief, because I'm like, you know what? I've really thought that, there's something wrong here. Like, why aren't they throwing downfield? Like, how is it that the 49ers are stopping the running game, but also doubling DK Metcalf? Like, how can those two things exist? If they are stopping the running game and leaving a one-on-one to DK Metcalf, then can we throw the one-on-one downfield? Like, can we actually use DK Metcalf in the best way possible for his game, which is a downfield route runner? Okay, we know Russell Wilson's a superb downfield thrower. We know Gino's strengths are more in the kind of intermediate range and being accurate and poised in the pocket, which is a term DK Metcalf used as well. But also, can we actually try a shot or two? And then you kind of hear Pete's comments, and if you piece stuff together, and it'll be interesting to hear from Waldron, kind of does sound like they would maybe have been holding back a bit on that. Didn't want Gino to kill the team with unnecessary turnovers. But now, big trust. And I think Pete realizes, you know what? Gino's doing everything right. And we got shut out for 6 consecutive quarters. We probably need to push the ball downfield to stop teams camping on that kind of intermediate to short window, and to stop teams from fitting the runners aggressively. We stop them creeping up by throwing over the top of them.
Yeah, stretch the field. And like you said, you got to get DK more involved here because it's been pretty quiet for him. But, you saw like you can throw it up to him. He's going to go get it. We saw that on the flea flicker that ended up, getting called back on the Lucas ineligible man downfield. So, DK obviously was playing coy today during his presser, but you expect that. But overall, I think we're going to see an emphasis on DK, and it's going to be a good matchup. I think too, because isn't Terrell going to be on him on Sunday?
Yeah, I think so, and he's a really promising cornerback. I'm not sure how he started this season, but I know last year he finished as like definitely
All-pro.
top 10. But
All-pro.
there we go. Yeah, I was going to say top 5 corner, so that matches. And interesting that DK Metcalf was he he was very positive about that. He said it was a sigh of relief to hear Pete Carroll say that like we can go and let Gino go out and play. And then I think I was hard to hear, but I think a follow-up from a reporter was that's something you like to hear as a pass catcher, right? And DK said, yeah, laughing, and then said, we'll see. So perhaps, he's thinking that it may not last, this stuff, but, there's no reason it won't. Like, as I said, they've been pass heavy with Gino. It's just the type of passes and the type of concepts available to them. It's the perfect moment to do it against the Falcons, and it really is what was needed. But I am still just taken aback about how positive Pete Carroll was about Geno Smith. Like there was, it's almost to me as though reading between the lines, Carroll is more of the Geno kind of believer, whereas Waldron has taken a bit longer. And also, you do have a head coach who's saying like it's all about the ball, don't turn the ball over. Waldron's probably, I mean, for one, he's the guy calling the plays and designing the plays, and it's his offense, but he's probably the one who's a bit more like, oh, can we really do this with Geno Smith? And then I think Pete's sort of in his kind of not GM, but managerial, overseeing everything, delegating, head coaching position. Pete's like, yeah, we can do it. Like saying, I think he looks really, really good. Saying everything he's done in. He's convinced from what he's shown in practice and what he's seen, and he's carried that into games. The game's not too big. He's really comfortable. He's very poised. He's accurate as heck. There's no reason to be worried about him. And then saying, bringing up his stat about completing 80% of passes in consecutive games, and that no one's ever seen that happen before. Like now, some of that is the short passing elements. Like throwing short, but then like. If that goes down to 60-ish% and you're still not turning the ball over and you're actually throwing downfield and not being shut out as an offense, probably a good idea.
Yeah. So we'd like to see more aggressiveness this week. And we'll get into that more on tomorrow's episode when we preview the whole matchup. But you got to get DK Metcalf involved when you have a talent like that. Just because you don't have as good of a deep ball thrower, I mean, Russell Wilson's arguably the best deep ball thrower in the world right now. So like, when you downgrade from that, obviously like there's a little bit of a hesitancy there, and obviously, with what you're saying about Waldron, also he might be, I mean, it's his ass, right? Like if things go awry, it's kind of, all fingers point to Waldron, whether it's fair or not, right? That's just the nature of coordinators, of play callers. So, I think we'll see things open up at least a little bit more in this game. But I think also, with Ken Walker back now, another week healthier, Penny's still healthy. I think we're going to see a good dose of the run still. And just to kind of circle back to the whole comment, like, yeah, I don't think this is a volume thing. Once again, I think this is more just the style in which they want to play football and the way that they want to approach the pass game. And there's still going to be a lot of run mixed in there. And there needs to be, right? Because, that's how to be a healthy, balanced offense, right? You got to mix in the run there because it's going to open up more things for you in the pass game as well, especially for how this offense operates.
Yeah. Should also say that the other consideration is, when it comes to passing more, and especially in pure drop back situations where there's no threat of the run to kind of help out against pass rushers, the two rookie offensive tackles, Abraham Lucas and Charles Cross, they were a big consideration. And Carroll said that that them playing better has been, encouraging. They didn't want to expose them, but now they've sort of shown that they're not fully exposed. Yeah, they're making the odd rookie mistake, but they're handling the stuff. They've played against some frightening edge rushers already. Now the NFL's full of them, but I think the Broncos and the 49ers have real good pairings. Well, especially clear ones, and so now that there's a bit more confidence in them, there's a chance to do more. But also with Geno operating in the pocket in a way where he's stepping up, he's not dropping really deep, and he's not going to have that kind of running around, scrambling ability, which may be difficult for tackles. He's going to behave in typical pocket behavior. Then I think let's open it up. Let's see the past. So really exciting times. Kind of. Still a bit nervous. As much as I believe in Geno, it is still like, ooh. But then also, I like not being shut out for 6 quarters. I like the idea of DK Metcalf actually being more than just a throw it up to him possession receiver of like 10 to 15 yards on a comeback.
My fantasy team would also like that, by the way.
There we go. Yeah, it all comes back to fantasy football.
Obviously, stats, yardage, touchdowns, receptions. Of course, that's all that matters when we're talking about football. But yeah, I agree with everything that you said. It's just, it is like a little scary, but you know what? Why not? Why not open things up? Why not, see what Geno looks like in a more, stretched out offense? Like, let's see it. Let's experiment a little bit here. You really don't have anything to lose in doing so right now, especially this early on in the season. You got the Falcons. Aren't the Falcons like a top or a bottom 3 defense right now? Like, so
they are. Yeah. Although Carroll described them as very active and multiple on defense. So
in Pete Carroll talk, that means ass.
They're trying to make things happen. Hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully. All right. So what else do we got? We got anything more on the offense or?
Well, aside from one comment Carol made today. Oh, so it's Wednesday when we're recording and also live on YouTube. So make sure you check that out if you get the chance. And on my Twitter, D. Eskridge, Carol said he's still viewing as like a rookie, which he, on reflection, probably wouldn't have said that in a press conference. He was being nice and open, Carol, today. It's also true, and you can kind of see that in the fact that he played 3 snaps. Goodwin, again, is getting over 50% of the snaps. He's the clear wide receiver 3 in the offense. He's that guy, and Eskridge is kind of down the pecking order.
Can they let him get vertical at least a little bit? Just that's all I'm asking.
Well, maybe with the expansion in the passing game that we've been promised, maybe we do see a bit of that. But then again, like Goodwin's a burner, and he seems like he'd get those reps. So Eskridge in his second season, again, he's going through it, and he's now 26, 25? He's an old. I know he's an old. He might be pushing 26 now, so tough for him. Won't be the season that he was expecting, but it started off poorly, getting hurt again, soft tissue injury, so that's a bit frustrating. And Carroll, I think, wasn't expecting that. I think he really wanted better conditioning out of him. And now, it's a uphill kind of climb in season for a player to suddenly get more snaps. The only thing that's happened there is another player gets hurt, really. So
Eskridge is 25. Birthday is in March though, so he'll be 26 right after the season. I'm 26. Does that mean I'm an old?
You're an old.
Oh no.
Confirmed old. As a 25-year-old, you are a big time old.
Oh, I'm a dinosaur. Damn. All right. Let's get into this defense. I particularly found some interesting things in what Clint Hurt had to say, but let's check in with what Pete had to say first, though. What do you got for me on that?
Well, just that he was, obviously saying about how they didn't tackle very well and they didn't play very well. It was interesting on the Monday. He was talking about the run fits, which I found good, and he talked about how when they're in 2 high safety looks, they kind of have to do a bit more stuff like spilling the front and stuff like that, which I did on my Substack, Seahawks on Tape by Matty F. Brown. I did an article looking at one of those
subscribe
mechanics.
now.
Yes, subscribe, please. And thank you to those who already
and
do.
Also subscribe to the YouTube channel if you're watching right now. You haven't already.
Yeah, leave a comment, leave a like if you really want to. That'd be lovely. Thank you very much. Yeah, so he said about basically you have to do a bit extra when you're in too high because you have one less guy in the box. You think about too high, so that would be you cover twos, your cover fours or quarters, your quarter half, so cover six, and your half quarter, so cover eight. You have one extra guy back deep, so you have one less guy down in the box fitting the run. And so sometimes because you're outnumbered against the run, you have to, steal a gap by putting a defensive end out wide and then spiking him from that gap into another gap to then force the football further out to the perimeter, buying time for the guys who are deep to then come up and play the run. And Carroll mentioned that, and he said that basically how the guys up front need to work to keep guys off the linebacker so they can flow and make plays, but that's not really happening quite yet. Like the chemistry is a bit broken. The complementary play, he described it, of like keeping guys clean, and then the linebackers flowing to the football and finding the football, and there's pursuit angles and tracking. Something Josh Jones mentioned, the safety Josh Jones, who spoke today, on Wednesday, that is. He also mentioned their tracking needs work. That just requires a bit better football. And I don't know how, I don't know how that comes with time. I don't know how that comes in quick time. And the Falcons pound the heck out of the football, along with using Mariota in their run game and their boot game. So it'll be interesting to see against Atlanta if Seattle can bounce back. It's a great test for them. They've struggled in back-to-back weeks, and yeah, I'm not too positive from what I've seen. But again, tape episode tomorrow, that is a kind of a bigger thing for that, where we'll kind of delve into who exactly is struggling, what exactly is going wrong. But the coaching staff, the players, they're well aware of the issue, as they've said in press conferences.
On the tackling front, obviously that can be an issue for younger guys, but why does that end up being an issue maybe for some veterans like we're seeing? Because we're seeing some guys that have been around also deal with tackling issues. Why does it seem like it's kind of a contagious thing?
I think it's just, missed tackles can happen for so many different reasons, right? But I think most of it is trying too hard to make a play. And so if you really trying to get into the backfield or you're really trying to take your shots for a tackle for loss, well, then your pursuit angle is more aggressive. So then you have less room for error. Clint Hurt mentioned players leaving their feet too much. And again, that's kind of, if you're leaving your feet to make a tackle, that's because you're further away from the ball carrier a lot of the time. And so you're having to dive rather than being able to reach him standing up. You're having to fully extend yourself to bring him down or make contact. So I think it is like a bit of over aggression leading to over pursuit, leading to, leaving your feet for tackles, slipping off stuff. And then obviously, San Francisco in particular, Deebo Samuel is a special player. And you come back to the fact that aside from his, big 51-yard run where they had him in the backfield, but he's just unbelievably special, then, the yards per carry is 3.3, which within that, if you watch the tape, and again, last time I said tape podcast tomorrow, but if you watch the tape, their run defense still is boom or bust. It's either a tackle for loss or there's a chunk gain, but it's still the overall 3.3 yards per carry is much more positive. Interestingly, as well, in his Brock and Salk interview, Carroll mentioned some schematic things they can do better to get more guys around the ball. He didn't get followed up on that in that interview or even in his two press conferences since. I imagine he's talking about blitzing a bit more, putting more guys and playing, because they played a lot of middle field close, so not the too high stuff, but a lot of one high where they have the extra guy in the box to play the run. But I think also blitzing off that, so getting more guys thinking run focused and attacking down at the line of scrimmage. I think that's something Seattle did well, and I think it worked. They just didn't do it probably as much. The flip side of that is you do that and then you bust the play for a touchdown on that Ross Dwelly catch where Jordan Brooks and Cody Barton Brooks messed up, but Barton could have perhaps communicated to Brooks.
Yeah. So let's dive into what Clint Hurts said today, because I think there was a lot of interesting stuff there. Let's kind of just go over the smaller items first, and this kind of goes off of what Pete was also talking about a little bit. Daryl Johnson, who seemed to have a pretty decent day in San Francisco, seems like he's going to get more snaps. Obviously, tape pod tomorrow, but I want to ask you.
We can't say that anymore.
Oh yeah. All right. Well, that's you've said it a lot. I get
you
one.
felt left out. I
get one. All right, but I want to ask you about Daryl Johnson. The decision to give him more snaps. What did you see from him against San Francisco?
Interesting, right? Because here's this dude who comes in that you're like, he knows Clint Hurt. He may or may not have Instagrammed out the first page of the playbook, which I saw it, Daryl. Thank you very much. That's in the saved screenshots. We now know Tight Wheel 6, which we already knew. But anyway, he has the measurables. He's long, he's big, and to me, like Carol talked about how, like in terms of Darrell Taylor, who we'll get to, interesting stuff with him. But in terms of the Darrell Taylors, the Boye Maffeys, the Uchenna Nwosus, that edge grouping, they have to figure out like who works in running downs, who works in passing downs, like how much do you want an outside linebacker setting the edge against the run. They're playing a lot of even nickel front, so 4-2-5, and it looks like just four guys down the line of scrimmage, where it's kind of more like a 4-3 D end, especially if you want to the B gap bubble side, where you're more like playing like a 5-10 and you need to be big and strong. And so on running downs, that's kind of exhausting, right? And so Daryl Johnson comes in and he takes the load off those pass rushers. I think he played I can get it up in a second. Like, I think he played about 27% of the snaps, but he was splashy on those snaps.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's the kind of hardworking dude, along with his special teams impact, that you need to take the load off guys. Just rely on him to be able to set an edge and be that kind of guy to help out like your Taylors and your more premium pass rushers. Like, you won't see Johnson showing up. He played 24% of the snaps. You won't see Johnson showing up on on passing downs necessarily. Like, something will have gone wrong if he is. But to have that kind of like hard-working run defender who can be relied on just to set on edge is really, really important, because
and I mean they need that right now.
Yeah, they really do. You're right, and Maffei's inexperienced. And let me just have I just lost my snap counts? Here we go. Yeah, Johnson also played 96% of special teams, which for a dude who, he's big. Like he's like they call him an outside linebacker because they're running a 3-4. But like at his pro day, he was 253 pounds, 6'6", with 33 7/8 of an inch long arms. Like, for him to get downfield on kickoff and punt coverage, which Carol mentioned as being impressive. Well, it is impressive. So
yeah,
great little pickup. How did they get him?
He was a waiver claim from Carolina.
Yeah. That he's like that extra outside linebacker they needed, because you had like the other outside linebacker options, like your Donkers, your Josh. I don't want to mispronounce his name. Yeah. Thank you very much. That's bad of me. You had those guys, and it seems like Johnson sort of usurped them, and I think he probably does offer more as an edge set against the run. Those other two names are more kind of the pass rush specialists. What does Seattle need right now? Like, what are the strengths and weaknesses of their other edge rushers? Well, they need edge setting against the run, and Johnson's doing that.
All right, so you hinted about it a little bit. Darrell Taylor. Clint Hurt's answer today was very interesting about Darrell Taylor. Yeah, so he gets asked about, I think the question, I'm sorry, I forget who asked it. Apologies to whoever that was. But I believe the question was something along the lines of, how did Darrell Taylor perform on Sunday? Or what did you think about his performance on Sunday? And you could just tell by the body language that Clint Hurt was not too pleased with how Darrell Taylor performed, because he took a pause there before he answered.
Yeah, he was thinking through his words, right? He was like,
Yeah,
"Do I can't. No, I can't throw my guy
yeah.
under the bus, but also
Yeah,
he's
but
in the doghouse."
he almost, I mean, he basically did. He was like, I'm not gonna, I already handled the accountability stuff in private with him, but you know, he needs to play more. Here, he needs to produce more consistently, or something along those lines. Like, ooh boy, yeah, like you said, he's in the doghouse right now. Like Darrell Taylor is in. He's not in Clinton Hurt's good graces at the moment. And I mean, for good reason,
Ruh-roh.
right?
Yeah, for good reason. Like he's been very on and off against like run setting the edge, and that's how Hurt described it. Like he's been inconsistent, and yeah, I'm sure it will come good. Like Carroll said, how Taylor's still learning, right? He said he's still learning their stuff. And to be fair, like okay, he says that he played outside linebacker in Tennessee and it's the same, but really it's not because they're playing like nickel fronts and they're playing four down. They're not playing like bare fronts that often. And when they do play bare fronts, there's a bit more like spilling than he'd have done at Tennessee, where I think they just pure edge setted it back there. Also, that was a few years ago, and this is the pros. So, yeah, I mean, I'm sure it will come good. And Carol also mentioned how they're trying to figure out their rotations, and that does pertain to Taylor because it's like, well, how much running down exposure do we give him? How much passing down exposure do we give him? How do we get him, like, as Carlos Dunlap had a grievance that he wasn't playing enough because he was taking time off. They wanted him as a pass rush specialist, but then he's like, how do I find a rhythm as a player, as a rusher? Like, it's really difficult. So I don't know. They'll work it out, but also, week one I was against Denver. I was like, well, Nwosu was the guy on the right of the defensive line. They were trying to flush Russ to that side. And Nwosu had the kind of true two-way go and the inside moves available to him. And Taylor, on the other hand, was on the left. And yeah, he had some inconsistent moments setting the edge. But as a rusher, he was mainly used just to set a deep edge on the left to stop Russell going that side. And so I was like, well, the pass rush plan probably limited Taylor slightly, along with the fact that he got like some egregious holds down the stretch of that game. But then this game, it's like, oh, well, Taylor's going to have a rush at some point, right? And he didn't. Now, Hurt did also mention the challenges of the game in the sense that they didn't really force San Francisco into enough clear pass rush situations.
Yeah.
But there were still a few, and Nwosu's still impressed on them. It's just Taylor didn't. You couldn't really tell he was on the field, which for a guy who we were expecting to come in and after his impressive second season in the league, but really kind of his rookie season, we kind of expected him to this season be that kind of big time premier pass rusher who could have, say, 10 sacks, which in the Seahawks system is big, and be like a real reliable pressure guy. We had questions about the depth after him. The positive is Nwosu being good, but maybe Taylor's going through like a second season slump. They always say like, that kind of sophomore issues. Maybe that's happening for Taylor. Maybe not, but I have confidence it will come good at some point. But it'd be nice if it was sooner rather than later. Like,
yeah, I mean, there's so much talent, there's so much upside in Taylor that, I mean, there's no way that that's just like gone for the year,
Yeah.
So I think we're at the very least going to start to see some flashes, and it's just, I mean, for the game, game plan wise in week one, there weren't many opportunities for him, and like you mentioned, there was some egregious holding calls on him. Week two, like you mentioned again, they didn't, they weren't really able to force the 49ers into those clear pass rushing situations. And, so there are reasons to be like, all right, well, or there's things that you can point to, like, this is why the production just isn't there right now.
Yeah.
And of course, there's, some glaring mishaps as well, like, some of the tackling stuff, of course, but.
And Hurt said, being Mr. Accountable, which accountability a big topic actually. Where I don't think we'll get into that, but I just saw
very Brian Schottenheimer-esque.
Yeah. But her being Mr. Accountable said how they need to coach better as long as as well as Taylor playing better. So yeah, it'll be all right. It's just if Taylor and Nwosu are popping, then watch out.
Yeah. So then Hurt was asked about the the 3-and-out issues. They haven't forced the 3-and-out yet this year, but he also did mention that they had penalties on like 3 of them that would have been 3-and-outs on Sunday. So hopefully they get that stuff cleaned up, because it's not, it's obviously not just the tackling, and this is going to happen though with a young team, with a team that in a defense that's playing a lot of young guys that don't have a ton of starts under their belt, right? Like that's natural, especially this early on in the season.
Yeah, when you look at like some of those penalties, like what the Mike Jackson pass interference on the underthrown football, which is really harsh, but that's inexperience of. He hasn't played much NFL football as a starting cornerback. He's played it perfectly, right? But that's just the experience of the body language of you don't walk out of that incompletion looking like a bit sheepish, like I'm jostling him a lot. You walk out of it like doing the whole incomplete gesture and looking like confident as hell, and that will come. And Carroll mentioned how that's a massive deal for them. You think about Kobe Bryant's illegal contact penalty on 3rd down. That's the inexperience of, he gets done by Judy in week 1 where he has his leverage broke. He just really didn't want to have his leverage broke in that instance. And so he's like, I'll just put my hands on him just to give myself a bit of an advantage. And they flag it. Now, the officiating last week was like highly, highly questionable. Seattle got unlucky. It happens. You can blame refs. They also didn't play well enough at all. But the officiating was highly questionable. Carroll mentioned how they sent in like a lot of plays. So, yeah. But nonetheless, like these reps for all of these new guys, like the young guys, they're invaluable, because how do you learn without making a mistake? You can't. You have to make mistakes. We'll see other new Seahawks players and inexperienced players making mistakes. That is, as you said, part of being a young team.
Yeah, I mean, if you haven't done something at this kind of level, you're probably gonna suck. You got to accept that. You're gonna suck at first. You're gonna take some L's along the way. Like, it's just gonna happen. And as a team, you're from where they currently stand right now, and just kind of rebooting this whole thing. You got to take those lumps. You just got to deal with it. You got to go through the ebbs and flows of a season. And now with the added extra game, now that you have 17 games in a regular season, it gives you even more of a buffer to kind of deal with that and still remain competitive in the big picture. So I think we're obviously going to see the natural growing pains, but eventually I think we're also going to see how the 2011 season kind of progressed, where you started to see flashes of some really, really cool stuff, like Richard Sherman and Cam Chancellor and Earl Thomas and those guys, and obviously I'm obviously not comparing this team to that team and overall, but like I think you're gonna start to see like these guys start to figure it out. Just the more you play, the more ball you play, and the more experience you get, the better you get, at least theoretically speaking. So you just kind of have to deal with it for now, and I think that they do have a formula that can work, where they can still win and still be competitive as these guys figure it out. And the schedule isn't too rough for them to also kind of go through that right now here at the start, because again, you got Falcons, Lions, like those are decent, they pose some challenges, but you're not going up against the Bucks, you're not going up against the Chiefs right now, you're not going up against the Chargers, you're not going up against the Bills. So I think in general, just kind of having this kind of relatively soft landing spot for these guys as well helps.
Yeah. And Carroll mentioned like Sidney Jones is sitting in the 3rd spot, but it was clear that like Tariq Woolen and Mike Jackson are clearly ahead of him, based on merit. Like they're going to roll with it. So
yeah,
that's cool.
And I mean, Woolen's been awesome to watch so far.
Yeah, might have to be my tape breakdown this week on my Substack, because he has been balling.
Yeah. So is he going to get the matchup against Drake London?
Ooh. I don't think they'll. Well, that's an interesting discussion, because obviously Woolen is like London is a unicorn, but then they also have Kyle Pitts, so it's kind of like a And they play him like a wide receiver, and so I don't know if it's necessarily the right thing to do. What you might see though is Woolen kind of on the one-on-one side of the coverage more than Mike Jackson is.
Yeah. Who even is like the Falcons' number 2 receiver? Like, obviously they got Pitts Pitts, but like, or London. Whatever.
That's a good question, because obviously they've got the weird situation going on, and then they've lost Julio, and they lost
it's Brian Edwards,
Russell Gage, Brian Edwards.
Yeah,
from the Raiders.
Yeah, and then Olamide Zaccheaus.
Okay.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah.
Right. So the last thing Hurt said, which I found interesting, was he basically said what we've been saying on this podcast for ages, that the 4-3 to 3-4 stuff is very overblown. He used the under front as a way of doing it, because I think they played under quite a bit against San Francisco. Like an under front fits like an under front. Like the under front started with like kind of 5-2 personnel. Now it kind of is natural to go to 3-4, but you can do it for 4-3 like Pete Carroll did for ages. And it, like, whatever the terminology, you're like fitting the run out of a certain spacing is fitting the run. And so I like how he doesn't use excuses, because it would be really easy, especially to like reporters, to be like, oh that is very different and difficult, and they're not going to call you out on that because they might not necessarily have the confidence. Like they haven't been coaching for ages. But I like how he didn't use that excuse.
I love about it. I love how you broke it down, because also, you're in today's age where people are breaking down all 22 guys like you and Griff and, just anyone now that you can find on Twitter. A lot of people are breaking down film. So, you're in this age now where like people know what's up. People know what you're doing. People, know what's going on. And that's out in the public. That's out in the general public now. And more people are starting to learn, and people are starting to learn about football in a different way. And, I like that he didn't beat around the bush as if that doesn't exist. Right. Because like there's still, there's still coordinators, still play callers, coaches, etc. that do. Right. We see that a little bit from Shane Waldron, admittedly. Like, like it's just, kind of acting like this just doesn't exist. Like I'm just going to BS you this sole answer. And it's like, come on, dude. Like we know, like, and plus like people in the Seattle media too, like they're aware of it. Right. And like they're at least, mildly conscious of, what the Seahawks do, how the Seahawks operate. So that's not going to fly with those guys.
And like on that subject, right? Like, I don't know how many coaches realize it, but like there's a lot of defensive and offensive NFL playbooks available.
Yeah.
For free on the internet. Like if you know the right people. Allegedly, if you know a guy or girl,
be careful, Maddie,
or person. So I don't want to incriminate myself here, but that may or may not be true. And so like, along with all 22, along with people just learning, like I've managed to learn football from the UK after, learning it in 2012, like that it was a sport. So it's possible, like, so it is more fun to just be open. And also, like, if I can do that, then teams can eat. Like Kyle Shanahan, obviously, like knows all of this stuff. Like he knows how their scheme works. He knows how it operates. So all the kind of secretive like stuff is just absolute nonsense. And so like even like Jordan Brooks, when he's more open in press conferences, like he's telling you what they call their front. They used to call it stick, their bare front. Now they call it tight. I told you that in 2020, but Jordan Brooks actually being open about it in press conferences is very cool as well. So. Yeah. So injuries, Ty.
Yeah. So
the not fun part.
Yeah. Today was actually kind of a concerning day on that front.
Oh my word. Yeah. What on earth's going on?
Yeah. Cody Barton's got a shoulder and a hip thing that he did not practice today. And we've talked about the lack of depth at linebackers. So that's really concerning. That's really scary. Don't like that. Not one bit. Shelby Harris was also absent today, but he had a personal thing. He's also dealing with the glute injury. But we'll see if he's able to get back here in the next day or two. Hope everything's all right with him personally, of course. Quandre Diggs also did not practice with a knee issue. So, Yeah. Also, Joey Blunt is hurt, so it's not like there's really a clear replacement there either. Yay! So, yeah, we're hopefully these guys. This is just precautionary, not practicing today. Let's just hope and cope here.
You're forgetting someone as well.
Who am I
Nickel
forgetting?
cornerback Justin Coleman did not practice
yeah,
today
yeah.
with a calf thing.
Yeah, it's still the
And-
calf thing. Yeah.
And Carroll said last week how we'll see about this game. So, and if Coleman can't go, Kobe Bryant, that's all right. But yeah, just another kind of injury. And the really sad thing was hearing Pete talk about Trey Brown, and the language around that was really concerning to me.
Yeah.
He said he's still working, trying to get right, which, I mean,
and Pete talk, that's not
injury. Just any talk that doesn't sound. It actually reminded me of when Pete spoke about Ben Burke-Irvin and his process to try and rehab. Like at a certain point, if you've lost your agility, you've lost your quick burst, and Trey Brown, like we all know, when he was healthy, unbelievable quick, short area quickness and ability to get out his breaks. Like, I mean, that just sucks. Actually sucks. And hopefully he's doing okay. I know that must be really tough on him, but yeah, hopefully he can get back. But it just did not sound good at all. Doesn't sound like we'll see him this season. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, that really sucks because God, those few weeks that he started were really, really promising. That tandem with him and DJ Reed. I mean, that was like the best cornerback play we've seen since Cello B era, like in Seattle. Like that was.
They were legit good, yeah.
Yeah, they were awesome.
So Cody Barton.
Yeah.
That would be Nick Ballore, and then I guess Tanner Muse. Is Tanner Muse now on the active roster?
I think he's still P squad.
Okay. But Tanner Muse is the backup, and then the depth is bad there. Like it's so bad that like if Barton was out for a few weeks, you'd want to kind of maybe do a trade, but then are they actually in a position where, they're not really in a position to go and do a trade, or maybe they are, I don't know.
I mean, you could trade like a sixth or something for a guy, a warm body at least. Like, I don't know, like
that'd be helpful. They signed Cheese, didn't they? Cheese. I can't remember his actual his name.
Cheese.
Clint Hurt called him Cheese.
Yeah,
he's a great guy from Chicago.
Cheese.
Damn, what's his
from
name?
Chicago.
He was with him in Chicago, but I think he was last with Arizona.
Okay.
This is bad.
This is really bad.
Bad prep. I'm sorry. We're talking about
this.
A fifth string linebacker here. So
yeah. Let's
generally speaking,
give us a break here, folks. Give us a break here, folks.
Give us a break. Like we're doing great. And
wait. Tanner Muse is now on the active roster.
Yeah, that makes sense because he'd have been called up 2 times already, and their linebacker depth was a bit questionable. So you may as well.
Christian Jones.
There we go, Christian Jones, Christian Cheesy Jones.
Yeah.
They've also got Vi Jones, but he transitions to more of an edge role on the practice squad, and then Donker as well is more of an edge. So it is going to be Christian Jones as the emergency.
God, the depth there sucks.
Yeah,
so
that's tough. As a guy who loves linebackers, that's not good. We've got some questions, Ty.
All right, let's hop into some questions. What do you guys want to know? You want to throw one up there, Maddie?
Yeah, let me click this. Hold on. Bang! Wow, look at that.
Whoa.
Look at that. Consumer -114.
You guys worried about Waldron? The sample size is getting bigger with less results. I don't see. I'm still like conflicted on how I feel about the offense as a whole, and I don't really know what the issue is. So, do you feel a little bit differently, Maddie?
Yeah. Well, I literally was saying this. I don't know if you had the chance, consumer, to catch our post game reaction. But I was saying like, I maybe I didn't say it then, but like I kind of it seems so easy to go after coordinators, right? And I'm a big fan.
We did talk about this now.
One of my biases is kind of one of my cognitive biases that I recognize as a coach and as someone who tries to give people the benefit of the doubt. I always think, well, there's got to be something more at play here than just it being as simple as blaming the coordinator, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that nicely prefaced.
Mm.
But what happened when all these slow starts and like disjointed elements and like lack of explosives on the offense, they all started kind of when, well, the lack of explosives was the end of the let Russ cook era, but the really like disjointed lack of number of plays stuff that all seemed to start when Waldron came, and it might just be an issue with him, like because we've seen a change at quarterback, right? We've seen a new defensive scheme come in, and now the defense needs to be better at forcing 3 and outs, no doubt. But it could just be a Waldron thing. That being said, now like we're hearing all this like let Gino go and do some stuff. Like that suggests they were really like not like well yeah they were really curtailing the passing game, and like if you're not gonna run your deep concepts and your explosive and your shot plays, which we didn't see much shot plays dialed up, like well then that really, as I said at the start of this episode, that really does mean that teams will camp on the intermediate to short, and they can play the run more freely. So there's no like, you need the deep stuff as a necessary constraint. It doesn't matter who your quarterback is. And Gino can throw deep better than a lot of guys give him credit for. Like he's not like, I feel like people act as though he's almost like ineffective throwing deep, and I used to think so, but he's not. He can hit the right passes when required. Think about how accurate he was in that Jags game against a lot of man coverage looks where the shot was on. He was accurate really deep. Think about that glorious far hash throw in the preseason against the Bears where he's like nailing it deep to was it Penny Hart in the honey hole of cover 2, but it was like absolutely beautiful. So he can throw deep, but also like deep doesn't have to be like 50 yards deep. Deep can be like 20 plus yards,
Yeah. And it doesn't always have to be like a go ball, So, I'm interested to see kind of how they work that in starting this week. Hopefully, they follow through on their word and we actually see some of that stuff. But yeah, like I said, after our on our post game show when we were kind of talking about the coordinator situation, it's like, when it comes to Waldron, it's like eventually the finger has to be pointed at him some. And, some of these issues are recurring no matter who the personnel is offensively. So it's like there's a common denominator here. And it's Shane Waldron. So, I kind of want to see how this unit meshes together though before making my kind of come into my final assumption here when it comes to Shane Waldron. But because again, like right now, especially with the injuries to Damian Lewis, you've basically been operating with 4 new offensive linemen, including your center, including both of your tackles. Like that's a lot. Plus you got a new quarterback, you're running a lot of new stuff in general. So yeah, it's just it's gonna take time. It's kind of like we were talking about with the defense. You kind of just gotta take your lumps here, especially because you have so many young guys that are trying to keep the ship afloat right now. So, at the end of the day, I think we just need more time before we kind of really get deep into the whole Waldron conversation.
Yeah, I mean, if this issue, because they haven't had like bad quarterback play, like if this issue persists or like comes up again, now that they've said they're going to really open up and expand the passing game, like it's like you said, it's recurring. So what's the common theme here? Who's the common denominator here? Anyway, we will have a tape podcast out.
You said it again.
Tomorrow. I said I wouldn't say it tomorrow. Say it again, but I did, that it's tomorrow. And we appreciate you listening to this news roundup. I think we're finding a flow with this, just me and Ty going. Obviously, we miss Griff, but we're making this work. And Griff will be back tomorrow. And we appreciate you. Please do subscribe to the podcast, share it with your friends, review it, follow Dane Gonzalez, follow me. It's at Matty F Brown. It's at Dane Gonzalez. No vowels, which is if you're an OG or you remember that Val's a controversial topic amongst us,
including Z, yes.
And if you're on Twitter as well, follow the podcast at Seattle Overload, where we tweet out when we go live. We're going to have a regular schedule. Basically, it's just post game, right? Then it's 2:30 my time in the morning. Wow, 6:30 Pacific time on a Wednesday night going live, and 9:30 is that Eastern?
Yes, that is Eastern.
And then exactly the same time, but on Thursday. Thursday night football this week's rubbish, so you've got to join us live. But if not,
what is the matchup?
Pittsburgh Browns. Is that correct?
Ugh.
Have they already played? That could be so wrong. Like I don't even know.
No, I think it actually. No, I think you're right. I think you're right about that.
Yeah. Or Steelers Browns, as would be conventional. Pittsburgh Cleveland. Anyway,
the
thank you everyone.
Browns.
Pittsburgh Browns. Matty F Brown. Thank you everyone. We appreciate you and have a great rest of your evening or day if you're listening to us.